r/1000lbsisters. Deets nuts, her mom says. Yay. She made it. Included photo. McFiggle says. Swept her off her feet like every other male she has ever talked to. Ralstonnebeck says. She does have a type, alive and vaguely interested. Inebriated Panda says. Wrong sub, Whitney is my big fat fabulous life, joking. Inebriated Panda says. I'm happy for this outcome. I'll never understand how someone can be so rude to anyone while not being able to defend themselves. I hope Chris gets his excess skin removed too. That's the highlight of the show for me, watching his journey. JLE0509 says. Chris comes across as the most likable and committed of the siblings, which makes his journey my favorite to follow. Solitary says. I really am rooting for Chris. Maybe he gets discouraged privately at times, but he always comes across as joyous, grateful for the help he was given and determined. I hope he gets that excess skin removed too. I think the plastic surgeons want to wait until it's just skin and not skin with fat remaining. I learned that from watching the one and only Drive. Now. Winter Sword says. Well, that's awesome. I'm kinda surprised her therapist signed off on it. Hopefully they had more private sessions with her being able to talk more open. I wouldn't want to be that open on TV. Sklomo31 says. I couldn't help but laugh at swept her off her feet. Simmering Sarah says. I'm surprised they did a bypass and not a sleeve as it's a more risky surgery. Solitary says. Oh wow, that's great. I'm glad Tammy reached goal and had the bypass. I hope this gives her the motivation to see it through to her goal weight. Alex3305 says. Honestly, when I started watching this show it was more about laughing about these obese crazy sisters. But I really grew fond of the whole Slatton family. I was generally filled with joy for Chris last year and now I'm so glad for her and Amy. I hope we can enjoy them for many more years. r/1000lbsisters. Viribaribati says. Sibling love. It's not just about the two sisters anymore, and they started showing more with the other siblings. Well, more so than the other seasons. How do we feel about it? Not so much of a spoiler, but just wanted to be safe. Blitzqueen27 says. I personally believe that Chris and Amanda are there for the cameras and a check. Especially Amanda. We heard very little about them in the first season, and during their YouTube days, and what we did hear was that they bullied Amy and Tammy. Misty seems genuine. Thamoonwachayarlep says. I like the other siblings. I think the show would really be struggling this season without them, because I get the impression that filming is somewhat limited in the rehab. Tammy has to do a fair amount of self-filmed footage, and Amy wanted to film less often because of her kids. They needed to fill in the gaps. Far_situation 3472 says. I think they should show less of Tammy and her tantrums. I really enjoy watching the other siblings. Amanda is a riot. Also, seeing Michael talk about his dad passing and Lil Bit being his support was nice. I lost my chihuahua in July, so I get it. Gage is the cutest. Livywishier23 says. I love Chris and Amanda. I love a fourth queen says. I like the addition of the siblings, I'd rather more of them than Tammy. Shima Maid 11 says. Chris and Amanda are my favorites. They could shift the show to them, and I would be happy. It's a Hootenberry says. It's confusing because in the first season, Amy was saying all she has is Michael and Tammy. And then season 2 comes along, and the other Slatton siblings show up, like they've always been there. DZ1224 says. That's family for you. Once they hear there might be some money in it for them, or their own few minutes of famothy come crawling out of the woodwork. Left Term 2472 says, I feel like the other siblings deal with them just for the show. They have most awkward dynamics in my opinion, and don't really know what's going on with each other. Best reply ever says, I liked them until Amanda and Misty said they didn't care about Lil Bit. Snicks and Shit says, I love Amanda and Misty, and I'm glad we get to see more of them. r/1000lbsisters. Bionic Greek says, Tammy and her therapist. Why does Tammy have a therapist on Zoom? If she's in a bariatric facility, wouldn't there be one on staff? Maybe not even full time, but come to visit a group of patients? Do they have group therapy? I mean, it can't just be a place to live. I was so confused by the Zoom. Hello_how says, she's the same one they use for 1000 pounds Best Friends, which is made by the same production company. My 600 pound life had this one therapist, Dr. Lola Clay, they used to use all the time, who would be dressed to the nines every appointment, while the patient came to the appointment in the only pair of threadbare sweatpants they own. Always felt weird. Ninja Lex says, on previous seasons, she's went to different therapists and treated them the same way, if not worse. She doesn't want therapy because she doesn't want to address her issues. Apkafi says, the therapist is hired by TLC and they chose to use someone who doesn't work at the bariatric facility. Tooth Beach says, I believe she would respond well, or at least better, to a male therapist, but that wouldn't make for good TV. Even I find condescending drive. Botox quite annoying. Ladder Barometer says, I just wish they'd allow her to choose a different therapist. In real life, it's acceptable to find a therapist that works for you. I find Tamma's therapist off-putting and a little pretentious. I don't think her style of treatment or even conversation is ever going to work for Tammy, though I guess it did somehow, since she made it to surgery. I don't know if it's a thing for therapists, but in my profession we learn mirror and matching since we work with all types of people. We are approaching folks in difficult situations and they need to feel comfortable. I can't imagine Tammy or any rural person feeling comfortable with that specific therapist. That doesn't make her a bad therapist by any means, just not a fitting one for this specific person in my opinion. Extra_fondant_8855 says, as a therapist, some therapists did move to offering online sessions only after COVID. I wonder if her therapist also specializes in her particular needs, addiction, weight loss, eating disorders, etc. So that is also why she's seeing her in particular. Oftentimes doctors will refer their patients to therapists who work on specific issues. TCRHS says, that particular therapist is probably the one contracted with TLC. r/1000lbsisters. Courtney 1988 says, is it just me? Or does this season seem a bit underwhelming and scripted harder than usual? Lionel Hutz 313 says, in retrospect, a lot of the show was just Tammy and Amy sitting next to each other and riffing/farting/insulting each other. Now that they can't just fill time with that. Results not great lol. Outrageous Yogurt 80 says, the entire family ticks me off. I had bariatric surgery 5 years ago and skin removal this past October. It was hard and I had to work to keep the weight off. This family, aside from Chris who seems to be trying, just gets it done and then continues to eat like trash and gain the weight back. They don't try and almost make a mockery of it. Only temporary 8287 says, it's just too delayed. We've already seen their life updates on social media long before the show airs it, so nothing is new. We've seen Amy's baby, we can tell Tammy's lost weight and might have gotten surgery, we know Tammy has a man, it's All old news. Throwaway underscore 87,624 says. It's delayed almost a year, much more than the other seasons, I think. That's why it's so boring to me. I already know everything that's happened. Prince Lemmy says. Waiting for the inevitable Chris spin-off. Thestral32 says. I get that it's a TV show, but the fact that people are saying these storylines are boring, like it's a fictional show, is odd. Your life is too boring. Make it better, so it entertains me. It's a weird thing to complain about. Woo Shy Fiddle says. It's not just you. It's really boring, and I could barely finish the first few episodes to the end. Unfortunately, I don't find the siblings that interesting either. It just seems awkward when Chris, Misty and Amanda interact with Tammy and Amy, with the exception of the last episode. Like, you can tell they are not as close as they make it seem. Respected Influencer says. 1000 Friends is more entertaining. That's all for this video. Was it good? I know not, for I'm a robot. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. This video is the product of an automated process.